Good afternoon, everyone. I am Yulio Kuswiharto, the chairman of MKI. Welcome to the last serial of MKI Enlit Asia serial webinar. On behalf of MKI, the Indonesian Electric Power Society, I would like to thank you for your participation in this webinar, a collaboration of MKI with Enlit Asia. For those who are still coming, welcome abroad. During all the past 6 episodes of this webinar, we have received an overwhelming responses where discussion went interesting and we received many further questions that we have answered by email. In total, 1,000 participants have registered and attended the webinar ranging from Asia Pacific, Australia, Europe, and many also from Indonesia. The discussion have covered mostly all topics related to a new strategy in driving the electric power business in Indonesia that is expected to improve the entire value chain from upstream to downstream and will underpin Indonesia's energy transition. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for your contribution for the success of this serial webinar. Your active involvement through comments, insights, questions, and thoughts that have been said along the serial event will be added to MKI's proposal to regulators and players in Indonesia electricity sector to strengthen and improve the policy and strategy within the sector. The serial webinar is a beginning of the MKI program for the grand commemoration of the 75th Indonesia National Electricity Day, where we will hold a digital international conference on the 4th and 5th of November 2020, focusing on challenges on energy transition to boost the industry productivity. Starting from this 10th of October 2020, we will run a virtual charity run and red event for a 1-month period. Your participants on those events are very welcome. Lastly, I hope you find this last episode together with the previous 6 episodes to be useful and insightful. Stay safe, stay healthy, and may God bless us all. Thank you.
Thank you, Pak Wiluyo. Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you for joining us for today. For this, the final episode of the current PLN-sponsored series, Indonesia's New Energy Paradigm, brought to you by Enlit Asia and our partners MKI. We have been honored to have been joined by many senior representatives from PLN on the discussions that we've had over the last couple of months, who have provided some actionable insights and outlined how the business will be moving forward in some key areas in the short to medium term. We've touched on the role of coal, digitalization, and smart grids, and of course looked at the rise of renewable energy in Indonesia's energy mix. If you've missed any of these episodes and would like to watch them, or if you would like to watch them again, you can find them all on our website, enlit.world/Asia. I've just a couple of notes before we begin. Firstly, we'd like to hear from you during today's panel discussion. If you have any questions for our speakers, please feel free to send them through the Ask Staff a Question box on the right-hand side of your screen. We'll answer as many of these as possible during today's session, but apologies in advance if we don't get around to all of them. A reminder that today's discussion is just one in a number of online conversations that will be taking place in the lead up to the physical Enlit Asia event, taking place in Jakarta from the 23rd to the 25th of March, 2021. Before I hand you over to the moderator of today's panel, Andrew Kinloch, Managing Director of Logi Group, for a discussion that will look at investment into Indonesia's energy sector, I'm delighted that we have been joined by the Vice President Director of PLN, Pak Damwan Prasojo, who has granted us a short interview in which he will discuss PLN's growth strategy, the impact of COVID-19 on PLN's business, and PLN's subsequent investment priorities in the short term. Pak Damwan, thank you so much for taking the time to join us today and answer a few questions.
Thank you, Simon. It's nice to be here today.
We see utilities business models globally shifting to adapt to a rapidly changing operating environment, and some have coined the term Utility 3.0. Could you perhaps tell us a little bit about PLN's growth strategy in light of the rise of the 3 Ds, being digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization? And what does Utility 3.0 mean for PLN?
Very good question to start, Simon. As you see, PLN is actually one of the largest utility companies in the world. We have more than 75 million customers, and also more than 100 billion worth of assets. And yet, we really cannot avoid challenges that we are facing today, of course. There is disruptive technologies that actually demand that for all of us to push digitalizations, of course, decentralizations, decarbonizations, and also all of those shaping the new electricity business, locally, regionally, and also globally. Hence, in facing that kind of challenge, we need to transform ourselves. Why? We need to maintain our competitive edge in order that all of us, especially PLN, able to be on the top and then to do excellence among others. So in that regard, we are transforming ourselves in the very near future, starting today until 2024. And what is our aspiration? And then we become the electricity champion in Southeast Asia, and to become #1 in the customer choice of energy solutions, of course, in Indonesia and also in the regions. And there are 4 aspirations to make it happen. First is lean. With all the advancements of technology, we believe this is the right time to utilize digital technology to improve our efficiency and of course, our reliability. We will digitize our major business processes with tools that we're going to equip, we develop to support. And we have, for instance, we have new trend analytical, we have demand forecasting, we have cost estimations, we have new tender analytical tools and others. We also have e-procurement, and right now it's being installed. E-approved vendor list, so that the auction process is going to be very efficient. We have e-contract, and we will assure that we're going to utilize the most advanced technologies in digital that is going to be fully utilized in PLN. Number 2 is green. We understand that today we are still dependent on fossil fuel and is still dominating the supply of energy in Indonesia. Currently, we only have 7.8 gigawatt of renewable energies. But within a few years, in the next 5 years, we're going to double that renewable energy from 7.8 to become 16.3 gigawatt of green energy. And that means we are in the transitioning process. And we want the transitioning process to run very smooth. The third one is, of course, innovative. What will a company going to be without adapting and innovating? It's going to be very hard to survive. So we will try to get our revenues from other sources beyond generation, beyond electricity. And in this case, we call it the beyond kilowatt hour. We will dig into fibers and areas of transportation. For instance, it's like, transforming the oil-based transportation to electric-based transportation. And the strategy number 4 is, of course, customer. Customer is the king. We will focus how to achieve 100% ratio of electrification. We will also be at our best to improve our customer experience through the relaunching of our new PLN Mobile. Before, the old PLN Mobile is without any digital payment. So that is going to be very hard for our customers to enjoy the full services of PLN. While our CEO shifting our strategy, before was only focusing on the supply-driven strategy. In 2014, of course, we were still experiencing deficit, but today we experiencing little bit of surplus, meaning that right now we're shifting not only to supply-driven strategy, but also to become demand-driven strategy. Hence, we need to create a new digital tools to serve our customer better. So that's why we are also very proud that we are improving our customer intimacy by providing specially enabled customer identification. Through the new app, they're going to receive notification when it comes to blackout services, etc., etc. Before, can you imagine, our manager area did not have any functionality, any features to communicate directly to our customers. That means our customer experience before was not very good, but right now we are improving it in every single aspect, from the strategy, from the operation, from the technology, from the people, from the capacity, from the culture, everything. Hence, in the future, PLN is still a power and utility company, but might be we can say that actually PLN is going to be customer-oriented company. And what is electricity? It could be our byproduct. So with these 4 aspirations, 4 pillars, PLN will transform to become more advanced power and utility company.
Okay. You mentioned there the amount of renewable energy that you're looking to install in Indonesia. And Indonesia plans, though, to install about 27 gigawatts of coal-fired electricity by 2028. How does PLN rationalize the government's drive for increased power output against your own new transformation strategy that has such a heavy focus on renewable and green energy?
Well, in 2014, actually, we were experiencing a lot of deficits. From 22 systems of electricity systems, half of it is actually experiencing very bad deficit. That's why actually in the first run is government is trying to stabilize balancing between the supply and demand in a very short period. If you look at China in 2002, the energy mix coming from coal was roughly only 46%. But if you fast forward to 2009, the energy mix coming from coal is roughly 80-something%. So they, at that time, they emphasizing on growth, stabilizing the supply. But in the same time, China, in the same period, developing renewable energy technology. And in the same time is preparing themselves to take off, shifting from fossil fuel to become renewable energy, from growth to become environmentally sustainable. And we are also doing the same thing here. In the first 5 years from 2014 until 2020, yes, we are installing coal-fired electricity that providing the foundation of stable base load for the system, while we are keeping the production costs more economic. We building coal plants using the state-of-the-art, the most advanced technology, ultra supercritical techniques. Hence, this providing advantages in efficiency. The net plant heat rate is much better than the previous one, yet much more environmentally friendly, comparatively speaking. And then, right now, we are putting a good effort balancing between growth and environmental sustainability. Each year, PLN and the Ministry of Energy and Mining preparing electricity supply business plan, or we call it the RUPTL. I think you heard about it. And we are here transitioning, pushing renewable energy, and we attempt to double its capacity in the next 5-6 years. Renewable energy resources for electricity generation such as biomass, biogas, biofuel, geothermal, hydropower, wind, solar, and large hydropower and geothermal are very well developed and becoming the core of PLN current generation mix, and of course, emphasizing on the future expansion plan. Our CEO has stated from time to time that the transformation must be done entirely, including switching from supply-driven to demand-driven. And here, that also includes the increase of energy mix by 23% in 2025. For instance, we've been doing a lot of assessment, and we're finding out that in 2,130 locations, we're still using diesel fuel and consists of 5,200 diesel engines. And this is mostly coming using diesel fuel, imported energy, and unfortunately, we're not producing oil that much. Comparatively speaking, with the demand of oil is roughly 1.5 million barrels a day, while the production is only 750,000 barrels a day. 10 years from today, the demand increased to become 2.5 million barrels a day, while the production is going to decrease to become only 500,000 barrels a day. So the import is going to go up. Hence, this is also, during the assessment, we realized the operation of this diesel engine is only 8 until 12 hours. So there is a deficit of supply, and there are so much potential of natural resources in those areas that actually cannot be utilized properly to provide the prosperity of the people living in those areas. Then, and of course, the cost of generation per kilowatt hour is roughly 4,000 rupiah per kilowatt hour. And this is actually low-hanging fruits. Are we going to shift from import-based energy to become domestic-based energy, from fossil fuel to become renewable energy? How are we going to be able also to reduce the cost? Hence, we're going to convert from diesel engines to become renewable energy. And the amount of the capacity is roughly 2 gigawatt of capacity that are going to be transformed from diesel fuel to renewable energy. But in the same time, we're going to reduce the cost from roughly 28 or 27 cents per kilowatt hour, and hopefully it's going to be much lower. It's going to be a base load, so this is renewable energy. And we're going to use local wisdom, whatever the renewable energy available in the area. But we already doing a lot of assessment, and even the assessment is like, it's not backward looking, it's forward looking. We map out what is the potential resources available in the area. How are we going to utilize resources for the benefit of the people, and what kind of electricity system that they need, so that the sustainable of development is going to take place in the area. So this is one of the low-hanging fruits. But of course, you know, in some other areas, we are experiencing a little bit of surplus. We're still transitioning from the fossil fuel to renewable energy. Of course, the first step is actually the potential development of fossil fuel-based, power plant is going to be stopped. The still non-committed is going to be stopped. And then, of course, we're taking into account balancing between the supply and demand and the transitioning from fossil fuel system to become renewable energy system. So this is a process. It's taking place by today. And let me tell you one thing. Why are we doing this? Because of regulation? The answer is no. We're doing this because we understand we need to provide cleaner energy, not only for the current generation, but for the future generations. And the only way to move forward is actually if we are able to innovate. What is our dream? The dream is very simple. If renewable energy can compete head-to-head with fossil fuel energy, the price is going down week by week, month by month, year by year. And for instance, it's like a long time ago when we procure photovoltaic energy, it was like 22 cents per kilowatt hour. And then we reduced to become 10 cents, 8 cents. The latest one is 5.7 cents per kilowatt hour. And then, but it's not the end of it. It's only a beginning. So we keep innovating to ensure that renewable energy is going to be the workhorse for the future, in which renewable energy is going to be able to compete in terms of economics, in terms of operation, in terms of technical, comparatively speaking, with the fossil fuel. So this is only a beginning. It's a very exciting moment, but this is a history in the making.
Sure. Okay. It's difficult these days to have any conversation without touching on the ongoing COVID-19 pandemic. I wonder, it's obviously had a significant and varied impact on the power sector globally. Can you talk to us a little bit about how it's impacted PLN's business?
Well, the consequences of COVID-19 pandemic has been little bit detrimental to PLN.
Sure.
As it happened, we realized in Java, Madura, and Bali, actually 75% of our demand is right there. The reduction of demand is roughly 12%. At one point is roughly as 15% until 16%. Today, at the national level, the reduction of demand on the average is roughly 7%. And when we're talking about our revenue is roughly $20 billion US, reduction of 7% is a lot. And then the first question is, how are we going to assess the demand? Are we going to balance between the supply and then also the demand? While we have an independent power producer, we have a long-term contract, we have a long-term contract with the natural gas supply, etc., etc. But this is the thing that we have done. The first thing is the CEO giving us an order to reassess how the pandemic actually affecting our demand, sector by sector. Sector by sector, can you imagine? And region by region. Because in Java, mostly the industry and the business is going down, but the demand for the household is increasing. What is the resultant? Still minus 7% by today. At one point it's 10 until 12%. In Sumatra, before the increasing demand is roughly 5.7%. And then during the pandemic until today is becoming only 2%. But in the eastern part of Indonesia, the pandemic didn't affect them anything. Even the demand is increased. So each region has responded this differently. But this is one thing. So the pandemic is also a blessing. So actually we deploy our regional team actually to assess every single aspect of the effect of the pandemic in that particular regions. Hence, not only we understand the impact, but also we understand the potential market in the regions. Because for each sector, for instance, textile, we understand, the reduction is like this. We even do the assessment like, how is the current condition? How is the global market of textile? How is the investment environment of the textile? And then how are you going to be able to recover from this pandemic? So we understand sector by sector the impact of COVID, and then how each sector is going to be recovering from that. And then from that, we are able to come up with the structuring, the demand, and came up with the 3 scenarios: optimistic, moderate, and then also pessimistic. And this doesn't mean a prediction of the future, but this is a scenario, meaning it's not what it should be. It's not what it will be, but what it should be, considering the conditions mentioned for the associated scenarios. So from this, we pick the scenario of moderate, and we rerun our power system modeling. And then we do analysis on the cascading every single aspect, from the supply side, from the demand side, from the operational side, from the value chains of our primary energy, coal, and then also the natural gas, the effect of the human capital development, the effect of the operations, the effect of each of the power plants, what is the availability factor, what is the capacity factor, how it's going to affect the future operation, etc., etc. So what I'm trying to convey here, with this pandemic, we understand more ourselves. And with this pandemic, this is an opportunity that the whole PLN, instead of being fragmented, is being unified. With this pandemic, we are able to map out the challenges, but more importantly, to come up with strategy to overcome. So there is a downside, but behind this challenge, there is opportunity. So for instance, it's like we understand also with this kind of challenges, how we going to balance between the supply and demand. Of course, only for the last couple of months, for the last 5-6 years, we didn't have any director of marketing. but only for the last 2 or 3 months, we set up a new director of marketing. We explore more potential markets, captive power, industry, refinery, etc., etc. And before, the reliability of our power system was not very good because we are experiencing deficit. But today, we are experiencing a surplus. The reliability of the system is much better right now, and we are able to expand our market, and we're doing it in much better fashion. Hence, this is an opportunity for the PLN to be stronger.
Great. That's good to hear. In light of the impact then, and the drop in demand, what is PLN's investment capability in the short term, and what areas are you prioritizing?
Well, I have mentioned earlier that we are very keen with green energy. Given that, of course, right now in the area and that we are still experiencing oversupply, we are transitioning from fossil fuel to green energy. But of course, for that area, we need also to understand how we're going to be able to balance between the supply, the surplus of supply, and then with the demand. We let the demand is going to grow, but in the same time, we're not going to add additional fossil fuel capacity. We just let whatever the commissioning date is just to run because the contract is already taking place some time ago. But in the same time, we are preparing for the new green investment. So we are developing green energy to support the low carbon economy in the future through 3 initiatives. First is developing hydro and geothermal power plants. We are also launching Green Booster by implementing co-firing biomass. Replacing diesel engines with much greener energy from import-based to domestic-based. So this is usually renewable energy with the energy storage. Also, we're developing hydro in multi-purpose dam. We also developing large-scale renewable energy based on industrial development, because there are so many potential of renewable energy, hydro, large scale, but there is no demand. So, of course, the idea is very simple. We're tapping into the untapped resources, but in the same time, we're creating a demand, large scale demand. So also, we are also resorting to new large scale geothermal and large scale storage, because the energy storage is detrimental, is very important for the new development of renewable energy, especially in those remote areas, in which, we're trying to replace entirely fossil fuel. And the only way, if the system is going to be able to operate 24 hours, instead of only a hybrid system. In the past, we've been using hybrid system, but we only replacing only 30% of the total capacity with the renewable energy. It's cheaper, but the fossil fuel that utilized in those remote areas is very expensive, 28 cents per kilowatt hour. So we are resorting to little bit cheaper renewable energy, of course with the energy storage, but it's going to be a baseload operating 24 hours. In addition, we also moving toward digitalizations, which focusing on several areas here. We've been doing power plant digitalizations. We are using like sensor automations, advanced analytical in real time to increase efficiency. And then also we are doing like energy prognosing health management using a big data. So those digital areas is some kind of new investment. We've been doing like distribution excellence through digitalizations, and we are starting that initiative right now. We are in the middle of the battle right now, and we are doing a lot of assessment on the distributions system, and we understand our weaknesses, and of course we're trying to overcome that weaknesses to come up with the implementation of new technology. For instance, it's like also we doing like digital procurement, and this means like integrated digital platform, artificial intelligence and analyticals. And we are also implementing smart grid to strengthen the grid resilience. In this case, it's like we cannot do this alone. And how are we going to move forward? Through collaborations, regional collaborations, national collaboration, and most importantly is international collaboration. In these cases, we are designing environment that conducive for investment. What is the spirit for the environment conducive for investment? One word: fairness. What is fairness? If somebody invests, of course, we need to ensure the cost of investment can be recouped. If there is risk, we need to ensure the risk is very well managed, very well calibrated. The risk can be shared between us and also the investment. And what is fairness? Fairness is the rate of return of the investment has to be fair. If the investment, the return on investment is only 6 or 7%, nobody going to invest. It's better off for them to put the money under the mattress. But if the return on investment is very well calibrated, then it's fairness. It's good for the PLN. It's good for the investor. So hence, right now is let me emphasize, we cannot do this alone. We're going to do this through collaborations. How? We need to design environment conducive for investment. The spirit is fairness. So I think that's the spirit, Simon.
Absolutely. Look, it's good to hear. We have obviously a large number of international stakeholders watching this interview. They'll be interested to hear that, and I was wondering if you might be able to tell us, where do you see opportunities for international expertise to contribute? Can you highlight perhaps some of the areas that you would invite these collaborations and these partnerships and international companies to come and play a role?
Well, one thing is this. The purpose is this. How are we going to build our national capacity? Knowledge, capacity building. How are we going to do it? How are we going to do capacity building? We learn from other nations. Some other nation is doing nationalizations. You know what's happening? The capacity is going down instead of going up. But through collaborations, there is a meeting of mind. And there is a share of technical know-how, knowledge, capacity. So in that regard, we are open for collaboration at the strategic level, at technical level, operational level, and also most importantly, as the investment level. Every single aspect. Of course, again, the spirit is fairness. Why collaboration is very important? Expediting national capacity building is through collaborations. In the process, we ensure there will be gradual increase of local content. And I think our international partners understand that we are a nation that's still developing by today. They are here not only to invest, but they are here to assist, to help, to be part of this exciting, rapid development. They understand that this is not a short-term collaboration. This is a long-term one. When we can define a very healthy foundation of long-term collaborations, then it's going to be a strong one. It's not only strengthen our nations, it will also strengthen our regions and also international collaborations with one purpose of all, to expedite growth. How are we going to balance between growth and environmental sustainability? How are we going to be able to expedite our national capacity building? Our international partners, they don't mind when we start developing our local content. They even facilitating that to happen. So in that regard, we sincerely appreciate all the stakeholders, our national stakeholders, regional stakeholders, and also international stakeholders. And with this kind of collaboration, we are very confident that we are able to build national capacity. I took it the expedited process of development of national capacity.
Okay. Okay. So look, unfortunately, that brings us to the end of the time that we have for questions. I would very happily sit here and carry on discussing this for a long time. I know there'd be a lot of interest in hearing this, but I appreciate that you're a very busy man. So look, all that's left for me is to say thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me today, for sharing your insights with our audience.
Simon, I sincerely enjoy our interview. And I'm very happy sharing my view, and especially the challenge and how we manage to overcome them. And especially I do hope that this is enlightening all the participants and wish everyone a big success. I'm very privileged. Thank you so much, Simon.
Thank you very much, sir.
Unmuted.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Andrew Kinlock of Logie Group. Pak Darmawan used the phrase exciting rapid development just now. And given the change that PLN is currently going through, he was not exaggerating. Add to that the sheer scale of Indonesia and PLN's 75 million customers, its challenges in terms of it being an enormous archipelago and much else, and there are a lot of potential opportunities for us to discuss for us to discuss whether we are domestic, foreign, suppliers, investors, lenders, and advisors. Simon mentioned that today is the 7th and final episode in Enlit's new energy paradigm series. And today, as he mentioned, we're going to focus on how to finance these opportunities, and in particular, what is needed to turn potential opportunities into actual ones. By way of introduction, I advise on infrastructure finance in Asia. This comprises the whole investment cycle, in that one, I advise governments on policy. This includes advising the MOF here in Indonesia on its support for PLN in particular, not just the public service obligation, but also more widely across Indonesia. So I was there helping set up the Guarantee Fund, SMI, and other instruments of MOF support across the country. I advise investors on strategy. I help properly prepare projects before they can actually go out and raise finance. I act as an expert witness in disputes where you can learn many lessons from hopefully other people's mistakes. And I include in that a naphtha burning plant in Cambodia that I did some time ago. I'm joined by 5 panelists today. David Dovan from the Asian Development Bank, a long-term supporter of PLN. Ibu Nadia Suraya of Lawyers HHP, affiliated with Baker McKenzie. David Chow of Solmax Bioenergy, a pioneer in waste to energy. Daniel Mallow of SocGen, the International Bank. And by Pak Bakara, who is EVP Corporate Planning at PLN. Now, Pak, I know you wanted to say a few words before we got into our discussion, so over to you.
Thank you for the opportunity given to me, Andrew. And it is a pleasure for me to be able to speak in this forum. Through this valuable time, allow me to briefly inform you about PLN new aspirations within the next 5 years and the challenges that PLN will face in achieving its aspirations, which can also be viewed as opportunities to have broad involvement from parties considering opportunity to have cooperation with PLN. Without further ado, I would like to begin my presentation. Can we move on to, okay. I would like to start with PLN CEO message, which has been the basis of the PLN transformation program to ensure sustainable growth of the company. Firstly is growth in revenue. As a company, PLN is managing a business that required adequate revenue to cover its operation to serve the customers and also to finance its investment to accommodate demand growth, as also has been explained with Pak Darmawan Prasojo. And the revenue from its customers can be generated through intensification and also the extensification programs. Second, the future generation oriented. This means that to be sustainable, PLN must seriously consider and move toward the energy use that can preserve the environment for future generations. These orientations will demand PLN to be more innovative, creative, to be able to adapt with changes in its environment. Lastly, to be able to have growth in revenue and future generation oriented, PLN is required to shift its paradigm internally, especially in planning aspects, from supply driven to demand driven, from distributed to centralized, and from fragmented vertical horizontal and to vertical horizontal integration, from non-renewable energy to new and renewable energy. Next slide, please. Okay. PLN realizes that deregulation, digitalization, decentralization, and decarbonization, which is also known as the 4D, will be main driving forces of business environmental changes. Therefore, in recent strategic and business planning of PLN, we deeply considered the influence of the driving forces in the future in formatting PLN strategy for the next 5 years. Within these slides, some of the strategic initiatives of PLN are shown and presented aligned with each driving forces. So, for example, for the deregulations, we have here digital procurement and investment prioritization, and also regulatory and sector structures. And also for the digitalization, we have here the digitally enabled distribution excellence and digitally enabled execution machine. And also we have an applications to be an interface between PLN and customers, the PLN mobile relaunch. And distribution decentralization, we will have the billing and collection optimization and also the outage management. And this is also needs the distributed energy resources. We're also thinking about how we are doing with the energy storage and demand response. And for decarbonization, we have an initiative strategic for the power plant of the future, and we are going to also launch the green boosters and many initiatives in achieving our target of the 23% of renewable energy capacity, and also electric vehicles infrastructure. Can I have these next slides? Okay, and then from the strategy development process undertaken early this year, PLN have a new vision to be electricity champion of Southeast Asia and #1 customer choice for energy solutions. To achieve this vision, PLN have 4 strategy streams. We call them green, lean, customer focused, and innovative. So, with green strategy, PLN is trying to be the leader of Indonesia's energy transition through rapid and efficient scale-up of renewables. And from lean, PLN will be an efficient, reliable, and least cost provider of electricity. And customer focus, PLN will try to provide world-class services for delighting its customers, and innovative, pursue company growth through innovative business models and services. Next slide, please. Okay, this slide is focusing on the challenge that PLN will face to achieve its vision, aligned with the government plan for a composition of the renewable energy in PLN energy mix to achieve the 20% renewable energy composition. As we can see here from the diagram, our current installed capacity for renewable is 7.8. We have also the current target. The current target is based on PLN draft of long-term business planning. We have here, we need to have the installed capacity around 12.8 for the renewables. And then if we see here, we have also the government national medium-term planning that sets a target for renewable installed capacity for 16.3. So there is a difference between PLN current target and also RPJAMN in 2024. Therefore, around 3.5 gigawatt. And for the actual and the current target, we have 5.0 gigawatt. And also to achieve the 23% in 2025, PLN needs additional installed capacity in renewables around 3.6 gigawatts to achieve the installed capacity of renewables 19.9%. So how PLN will do that? We have 3 sets of initiatives here. First one is to deliver the current target. We are going to build what has been planned in the our current target is 5 gigawatts, and also launch the green boosters, as also been explained by Pak Darman Prasojo, and launch large-scale renewables, such as for hydro, for rebate, and also geothermal and large-scale renewable energy, other large-scale renewable energy projects. Next, please. Can I have, okay. Okay, challenge and mitigations due to COVID-19. As you know that, as mentioned by Pak Darmawan Prasojo, that COVID-19 has had detrimental effects to PLN business. As you see that the target for the 2020 in the total for the holding is around, sorry, I need to clear it. $255 terawatt hour energy sales, and now in July, based on August realization is only 159 terawatt hours. So in year-on-year growth, we have in holding is plus 0.41% growth. However, in regional Jawa, Bali, and Madura, we see here in May 2020, we have a negative growth, monthly negative growth until minus 14.65% actually. So in this case, the COVID-19 pandemic slowed the energy sales growth, especially in Jawa, Bali, Madura region, which has negative growth. And however, other regions shows a positive growth. Thus, despite the realization are still far from the target on corporate scale, the sales still shows positive growth. So what is the PLN response to the COVID-19 impact? We are trying to prioritize the projects with this criteria. Priority 1 is to build a project with a mandatory projects, to continue. And then also the priority 2 is projects which gives the highest internal rate of return, and also shifting from supply driven to demand driven. trying to optimize the investment and stimulant to increase, give stimulant to increase the revenue. And also the priority number 5 is to dispatch optimization and primary energy optimization. This is our also breakthrough initiatives. Next slide, please. Okay, what is the business opportunity? As mentioned earlier, that we will have, especially in building some projects for the doing the electricity business. Now we are going to have a centralized end-to-end project execution for big renewable projects. We defined it's a more than 10 megawatts. Several projects will be doing it in PLN headquarters. And also we are going to set up a smart grid and smart meters for strategic cities, including the development of a new capital city of Indonesia, and launch dual feed and dual FS with a cluster strategy for diesel replacement with renewables, and set up a long strategic partnership with potential biomass suppliers, and develop a rapid renewable-based industry scheme for large-scale renewables linked to industrial estates. As we see here, we have a diagram of distributions of industrial estates, that some of it already supplied by PLN. I think this will be the end of my presentation for the 10 minutes given to me. Thank you, Mr. Andrew.
Thank you very much. That really emphasized just how much change PLN is going through right now. I'll next ask each of the other 4 panelists to introduce their perspectives, if I could. David Dovan from the ADB, can I start with you?
So Andrew, what was the question?
I just wanted you to spend a couple of minutes introducing your perspective to this. In particular, what is the ADB's ambition? How can you get involved? What would you see the government or PLN change or progress? Very much, what is your perspective?
Sure. I mean, as way as an introduction, I've been in part of the private sector team for the last 3 years out of Jakarta. We've been quite active in the renewable space, financing 3 geothermal projects, wind and solar project, as well as a couple of gas. I mean, we definitely support PLN's view to go green. You know, we as an institution, as policy-wise, cannot do coal anymore. So we definitely look forward to seeing more tenders, you know, particularly solar and wind going forward, so we can actually support PLN going green in that sense. So that's our position. You know, so we look forward to more tenders basically over the next few years. Thank you.
Unmuted.
Very good. Ibu Nadia, what's the legal perspective on all of this? I imagine it's quite extensive.
It is actually, you know, yeah, because if you probably noticed, it's the regulatory changes in Indonesia that keeps happening, and you know, sometimes there are issues on whether one regulation can actually work in terms of, you know, compared to other regulation. Not to mention if there is, you know, not to mention if there is any discrepancy, inconsistency. But actually, if you probably heard 2 days ago, the House of Representatives have passed the omnibus bill into law, and you know, from the energy sector. Although to be honest, we're still, you know, my firm, our firm is still reviewing in more detail. But in terms of the energy sector, I think we can see there's a quite improvement in terms of, you know, like the licensing process. It would be centralized with the central government. This is good news. It would streamline the processing of the licensing, as well as you may be aware, then it would help boost the environment, you know, the development of the energy sector itself. One thing that probably I should add is that for the procurement itself by PLN, for the the projects, new projects, including the renewable projects that PLN, we've heard that PLN is now into the green energy, the renewables. We've seen the regulation has been changed to go back again to allowing PLN for the direct appointment, but although it remains to be seen whether the implementation in the future will be as quickly as we want.
I know this is not the main topic of this afternoon, but very briefly, Nadia, this omnibus law sounds quite ambitious, and it's being received fairly well, I understand, by the stock market, maybe not so well by trade unions and others, but the idea is to sweep away an awful lot of this regulatory red tape, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. You're actually right. Because everyone is, especially investors, is really looking forward for this. Again, this goes back to the streamlining of all these regulations that may be inconsistent within one and another, and then the central government, regional government, and the policies being streamlined again.
Very good, and we'll come back to that, I'm sure, when we start to talk about renewables in a few minutes. David Chow at Solmax, you're a pioneer in waste to energy. Tell us a little bit about how you're getting on.
Okay, hello everyone. So managing director of the Solmax, and we are a Canadian company and have the manufacturing facility, 11 factories in Canada, United States, Europe, and Asia. And since 2008, we come to Southeast Asia to promote our biogas power plant and the carbon technology, mainly in Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia. So far, and we have 57 projects in Thailand, Indonesia, and Malaysia, these three countries mainly. So we mainly look at the palm oil mills and the starch mills and the chicken farms, and build a biogas plant and turn the wastewater to the biogas and then generate electricity. So here, I just take a few minutes and share our experience here, mainly in Indonesia. So since 2007, and we started our BOO model, means build and own and operation model. So we closely work with PLN and Kalimantan and also the central and also different stakeholders. So for us, Indonesia is a bigger market and for renewable energy and fast growing. Everyone knows we're talking about renewable energy. And so, yeah, we'll continue working on that and quite positive. But a few challenges for the investor, like we are overseas investor, Canadian company, right? So what we are facing is, like Nadia mentioned, and one is the change quite frequently of the regulation. Like we're talking about the regulation 50, 2017, and then the regulation 10, 2018, and now we have the regulation 4 to 2020, right? Change from BOO to BOT, and now BOO again. So this is something, and change too often for us as an investor. We feel, sometimes not very stable. But one thing, and positive point again, we are very happy to see as an investor is now the government, the PLN, to listen to the invest. Now it's not a request to the BOT again, no transfer. Because when you request a transfer, like a biogas, biomass plant, as a foreign investor will request to buy the land in Indonesia. Because after 20 years, no matter how many years, BOO, and finish, we have to transfer for the land to the PLN. Otherwise, your biogas plant, the biomass plant, you build on the land. How you can transfer without the land? But as a foreign investor, even a local investor, you want to buy the land, especially one project where has been working is a PTPN. It's more like a government state-owned company. It's a land owned by the state-owned company. So it's almost impossible to buy the land. Maybe take 5-10 years for all the legal process. So this is a challenge, but it's very good now. And they remove the transfer, so it's BOO, so it's much easier for us. Another challenge we're facing is and the currency. the exchange rate. And so now on the exchange rate, and we saw in last 4 or 5 years, it's quite a fluctuate and down. And so for us, because all our investment, and we pay almost everything by US dollar, but it's a depreciation, all the FIT, all by PLN, and whoever pay us as a return, so all by Indonesian rupiah. So this is the risk we have to consider. And also talking about how our renewable energy, for example, I always see some audience, how with the current technology, it's quite challenging to ask investor of renewable energy, especially biogas, biomass, to compete with the conventional fuel power plant. It's quite challenging. So basically,
so leaving aside the
and the coordination, the process of the company, filing, and all the government, all these checking here, checking there. Compared to Canada, even we invested quite a lot of projects in Malaysia, Thailand. Honestly, we're not compared to Singapore. Still quite challenging. But we are happy to see, and in just the last 10 months or 1 year, Indonesia improved a lot for investment environment. So we can see, and doing business is much easier now. Even last year changed a lot. Yeah, so I really appreciate our opportunity to all the investors. Thank you.
Good. Okay, so I think the message there is it's not just a question of risks specific to your technology, but you're facing land acquisition problems, you're facing FX volatility, the way that, frankly, every investor does. And the other message I draw from that, David, is that you have a choice of countries into which to invest. In that respect, Daniel, can I ask you, our SocGen's attitude here? You too have a choice of countries into which to invest or to have your clients invest. Well, what's your approach here?
Sure, Andrew, and I think clearly Indonesia is a country blessed with potential, and I want to come back to maybe what Pak Bacara was talking about, because to me the two key drivers here for the sector will be, on the one hand, the fundamentals and the recovery in demand. And Pak Bacara mentioned that there's been a drop in demand because of the pandemic. So that's the first category, is the fundamentals and the demand recovery. And then secondly, the availability of capital for the sector. So on the fundamentals, Indonesia is still a country that, if we put COVID-19 aside for a second, it's a country that's experiencing typically high growth rates, 4.5%, 5.5% GDP growth. Demand for electricity outstrips GDP growth. There is still unmet demand in Indonesia. So the fundamentals, if we brush COVID-19 aside for a second, are still conducive, and it will be a purveyor of opportunities for the sector. I'm convinced of that. Secondly, the availability of capital. I think the good news is that even though we've gone through fairly disrupted financial markets, especially in the second quarter of this year, it's abating now a little bit, but we have gone through fairly disrupted financial markets, we have seen availability of capital remain high for renewables in particular. Solar, wind, geothermal, hydro, capital has remained available even at the peak of the crisis. That is good news for PLN's plan to go green, because this is clearly the sweet spot in terms of where investors, both on the equity side and on the debt side, want to deploy capital. Now, where could the bright spots be in Indonesia over the next few years? We talked already a little bit about the difficulties in land acquisition. To me, this is an opportunity for floating solar. If land acquisition is a problem, go on the water. And I think in Indonesia, we will see opportunities for large-scale floating solar projects on reservoirs, on lakes, and they can be a great complement to a hydro operation. And then you combine two renewable energy assets in the same location with the same transmission infrastructure. I think that is clearly an opportunity for Indonesia. Secondly, the geography in Indonesia, thousands of islands. PLN cannot do everything. It's impossible for PLN to connect all those remote locations to the grid. So it will be an opportunity for smaller scale distributed generation, solar applications at the local, at the village, or at the community level. So that will also be a source of opportunity. And then thirdly, not all renewables are created equal. Indonesia has a tremendous potential in hydro and in geothermal, thousands of megawatts or tens of thousands of megawatts of potential for those two asset classes. That will be a source of opportunity. Maybe for Indonesia, the renewable energy transition goes primarily to geothermal and hydro, and secondarily through wind and solar. So if you put all this together, I still see a lot of opportunities on the radar for this country.
Very good, thank you for that. As Daniel says, the worldwide appetite right now is for renewables. So let's focus a little bit on those, if we may. Pak Darmawan mentioned, Pakara mentioned plans to move from 7.8 gigawatts to 16.3 gigawatts, so as to make this target of 23% energy mix coming from renewables by 2025. But that's not 23% right now, it's only 12% right now. And in 2019, Indonesia raised only 359 million of funding for renewables. That was less even than Cambodia. So what is blocking the deal flow? Ibu Nadia, maybe you could just say a few words about what is blocking this deal flow.
So I guess should just start by since 2017, after the issuance of Minister Regulation 60 that Mr. David mentioned, there hasn't been any renewables projects because of the regulations. PLN needs to adapt to the rules that it will need to be done by limited tenders rather than direct appointment. So that's one of the reasons that was the holdup for the renewables projects. Another thing that we noticed is about the tariff issue, because obviously renewable projects are more expensive. It's really expensive, but then in terms of tariffs, it's being put head to head with the coal and the fossil fuel, right? The tariff is based on BPP, the production cost of PLN. Obviously, if it's coal related, it would be cheaper than the renewables technology. So that's where the hold up for the renewable projects at the moment from what we've seen. But hopefully, because you're probably aware that there would be a presidential regulation coming up where it's possible for a smaller scale wind and solar to be feed-in tariffs, biomass, biogas. So hopefully that would be helpful in addition to Regulation 4 to 2020 in February that now allows for the direct appointment.
Unmuted. Pak Bakara, can I put that question back to you? What changes would PLN like to see in the regulatory structure to enable these renewables to come through a little bit more easily, as Ibu Nadia was saying?
Okay. Actually, yes. Okay. In developing this new and renewable energy, we really think that PLN as a regulated company, we have a revenue also coming from the tariff as already established by the government, and then PLN also needs, when we are going to have to pursue this renewable energy, then we need also to have a guarantee that the PLN will survive, right? Because we are also needs the cash. If, as mentioned by Bu Nadia, the tariff of the renewable energy is too high, and then the BPP of PLN or our production cost will be higher than we sell to the customers, then it will reduce our capability to invest in this, especially in this renewable energy. Therefore, maybe last 5 years we are thinking about how to drive the production cost as low as possible. Then we see that the coal will be one of the solutions. And then now I think, as we also as already presented in my presentation, that we reconsidering about the importance of the new and renewable energy into our system, because I think there is renewable and new energy is going to be the future of the electricity industry. Therefore, I think how to encourage this, we will need that the government can set regulations, especially the tariff for this renewable energy, that also can ensure that PLN can support this renewable energy through this tariff. And maybe if the government, this is a kind of a special task for PLN, then as from the regulations, PLN will get more support from the government, especially from the increase of the subsidy and also the compensations for the energy sales to the customers. That's my answer, Andrew.
Very good. Pak Darmawan emphasized in his opening remarks how the return on investment had to be fair, and I presume that the risk allocation has to be fair as well, not just once the deal is signed and sealed, but also the extensive amount of time and effort that goes into getting the deal to a point where it can be financed. I see that. Good. I've just lost my train of thought. Yes, I wanted to ask you, Pak Bakara, whilst you had the floor, we have a question come in. Does the stopping of new investment in fossil fuel plants include gas, or are you just talking about coal?
Actually, in my presentation, it is written there about coal. As I mentioned earlier, that our generation is dominated by coal. But actually, not only coal, but we are trying also, say, all the non-renewable energy or the fossil fuels. We are considering to reduce all this production from this non-renewable energy. Andrew.
Unmuted. Talking of coal, let me move swiftly on, because Simon mentioned how 27 gigawatts of capacity were still to be financed, even though you're going to phase out coal over the medium term. How's this going to be financed? David Dovan at the ADB, can I ask your opinion first?
Specifically on coal, Andrew?
to build, how would you like ADB to raise, not ADB, how would you like PLN to raise the finance to build these coal-fired plants that are currently underway to some extent?
I think ADB's position has been quite clear over the last few years. I mean, policy-wise, we not support coal. And so therefore, we encourage PLN to look at other baseload alternatives such as geothermal, hydro, and gas. And if you actually look at all the recent financing that ADB has done, it's basically been gas in terms of baseload and also geothermal. So I think we hope that as the coal plants kind of retire, they're decommissioned, and effectively we look at much more greener sources to power PLN. Thank you.
You don't want to lend them the money. Does that mean that the Chinese will under the Belt and Road?
That's potentially one alternative, but what we can see is actually the trend is actually more and more banks and financial institutions are slowly stepping away from coal. So I think the universe of funding will slowly sort of limit itself in terms of future coal financings.
Unmuted. Yep. Daniel, I know that your compatriots, I'm thinking of Angie here, are getting out of the coal-fired business because they don't think it'll be possible to finance in a few years' time. But it may not be possible to finance it right now. What's the international bank attitude, do you think?
Yeah, I think two things. I think the capital available for the asset class is drying up every year a bit. If we look at 5 years ago, there were a number of institutions open to finance. Every year, there's less capital available. We've exited 5 years ago from this space, and it's an unstoppable force. The Singaporean banks have exited last year. The Japanese banks are exiting. The Chinese banks are still active, but even the Chinese banks will at some point get pressure to embark on their own energy transition. So the capital will dry up. It's an unstoppable force. The second thing I would say is it might become a misconception that coal is cheaper. We heard that argument a lot. Coal is cheaper. Because we only look at levelized cost of energy. But when all of a sudden your financing costs are skyrocketing for coal because there's so little capital available that you're at the mercy of marginal players, non-traditional financiers, that is adding up to the cost. When all of a sudden your asset that had an economic life of 25 or 30 years is likely to become stranded in 10 or 12 or 15 years, that is adding up to the cost. So I think the paradigm of calculating the cost of coal is changing, and it's no longer about the cost of the resource. It's also the cost of financing that will continue to go up, and it's the economic life of those assets that will get shorter. So the ability to make a return on those assets will be increasingly difficult. As you said, Engie has been exiting and has been selling assets. Quite frankly, they're probably pretty happy that they sold 2 or 3 years ago because the valuation will come down of those assets over time. So if you're a seller today, if you're a seller in 5 years, in 10 years, the prices will continue to decrease because the universe of buyers for those assets is shrinking. So I think when we put all that together, all of a sudden the investment proposition is not as attractive anymore. I would say, though, that I very much think that natural gas will be part of the energy transition. And that natural gas has a role to play. The energy matrix, there's a bit of feedback. There's a bit of feedback. I think it's your mic, Andrew. Yeah. So I was saying that natural gas has very much a role to play in the energy transition as a complement to renewables. And in some markets where renewables have made great strides and have increased their market share substantially, we're actually seeing renewed investment in natural gas as a backup for renewables. So I think that is clearly an asset class that has a future in front of it. Thank you. We can't hear you, Andrew. You're on mute now.
Sorry, let me start again. So we have a second question from the audience. How do we see the future of old thermal in 20 years' time? And I suspect the answer is not very much. These are going to be stranded well before then. Daniel, would you agree?
I'm sorry, the future of thermal?
Yes, so the question from the audience is about the future of old thermal, which I presume means coal.
Yeah, to me, the future of thermal is really gas substituting. The future of thermal, in my mind, is really gas substituting for coal. Over time, the share of coal will decrease. It will take some time because there's still some new coal getting built. So it's going to take some time to get to that inflection point, but long term it will decrease and the share of gas will increase, as will renewables.
Daniel, whilst you have the floor, what do you see the future for PLN being able to raise finance at the corporate level? I'm conscious that they've put out some tremendously long-dated inflation-linked bonds, and they could use those funds to build their own coal-fired capacity. Do you think it's more a question of them having to do it that way?
Yeah, I think so. I think PLN in itself will continue to enjoy strong access to the financing markets. You know, it has a BBB flat investment grade rating. It's well known in the investment community. The capital markets will remain available to them. I think the difficulty will be maybe a little bit more on the bank side, as banks increasingly incorporate ESG, environmental and social guidelines in their ability to lend. That might create a shift a little bit. But at the same time, PLN will evolve. PLN, like Bakara mentioned, PLN will invest more substantially in renewable energy. So PLN's own business mix will evolve over time and make it more palatable. But I think in the medium run, PLN will continue to enjoy a solid access to the capital markets, given its investment grade credit rating, its dominant position in the market. So I'm not concerned about that.
I agree. I'm conscious we have only another 6 to 7 minutes available, so I'll ask each of you to offer up some concluding remarks. Bakara, could I maybe start with you in a minute or two, what you'd like to be focusing on, obviously implementing the presentation you gave us, I presume. A couple of minutes, if you could, on concluding remarks.
Okay, thank you, Andrew. Actually, the 4D forces, the regulation, the carbonization, digitalization, and also decentralizations, forces PLN also to have new strategic directions, especially the decarbonizations that we see that in the future this will be the main source of energy that should be used by electricity industry, especially PLN. Therefore, PLN are trying to move towards this more green strategy to have its sustainability in the future. Thank you, Andrew.
David at Solmax, what takeaways would you like the audience to take away?
Okay, thank you, Andrew. So basically, I would like to point out, when we talk about renewable energy, even in Indonesia, and bioenergy, biogas, the small portion, we're talking about 1 megawatt, 2 megawatt, 3 megawatt. Sometimes PLN, we're talking about 200 megawatt, right? So it's always a small portion in the renewable energy. But we have to look at the environment, and the impact of the biogas project. And we reduce all the emission of the greenhouse gas and control the bad smell, because I visit so many palm oil mills and all these starch mills and the very bad smell. And the main issue is the emission of the greenhouse gas. Also, so many remote areas in the Indonesia islands, and like PLN point out, all the diesel engine. So this area, we have a lot of palm oil mills. In Indonesia, we have almost 900 palm oil mills. And so we have all the wastewater we can turn to and electricity and connect to PLN for local community. So I think this will play quite a big role, though it's a small amount. And then, as so much, and as a world leader for the biogas power plant technology from Canada, and we'll continue looking for the opportunity and in Indonesia or other ASEAN countries to develop, provide our technology. Also, we invest. We're looking forward to work with all the partners here. Thank you.
Thank you, David. Daniel, what concluding remarks on both the international banking side and on behalf of the domestic banking side? Do you see their appetite being good and long-lasting, and in particular, what sort of tenors do you think the domestic banks are stepping up for these days?
Yeah, I think there is plenty of appetite out there. We just closed a financing for 2 solar projects, 8 megawatts in Lombok and 15 megawatts in Sulawesi. I think this is the first international bank project financing for solar in Indonesia, and it's a 15-year transaction. So the willingness to deploy long-term capital in the space is there. The domestic banks are a little bit less active in project finance traditionally, and they maybe don't go as long. But in general, I still think that renewables is the sweet spot here in terms of attracting capital. So my view is really PLN is a formidable force in Indonesia, clearly, but they cannot do everything. So I think they would be well served to take advantage of that capital available and attract as much of it as possible to help develop the industry. And to me, some of the things that might help to attract even more capital is streamline the government approval process, streamline the permitting process, maybe have a fast track process for renewables where you're able to get your permits a little bit faster. Maybe find a way to streamline the land acquisition process. I know that is difficult. I know it is complicated, but if the regulator, if PLN, if the government is able to propose some sort of those fast tracking programs for permits, for land acquisition, for government approvals, I think that would even accelerate further the influx of capital for the industry, and PLN would be a beneficiary of that.
And Daniel, those solar projects were selling to PLN, were they?
That's right. They have long-term power purchase agreements with PLN. Absolutely. So PLN is the buyer of the power. Yeah.
And would you see scope to sell to a local municipality or someone else if that was permitted by law?
I think it is conceivable. It is conceivable.
Okay. Nadia, a minute of your time, if we may. A lot of the deal blockage is going to be addressed by you and your counterparts. What concluding remarks from you?
I guess it's really encouraging to hear that PLN is into focusing on the green energy. So because we see that there are many interests out there from investors regardless of the challenge. And we do that with the omnibus law, the recent changes to the law, the regulations on, and then the possibility of all this direct appointment, the streamlining of the licenses. I would echo Daniel that, this will actually helps in the development of the renewable projects in Indonesia, as well as, it's hoped to expedite all the existing projects that are actually in place at the moment. I guess one thing that I should add is that, the possibility of having the project documents itself, the project agreements, being bankable for lenders. So it's going to be it's going to be helpful for the investor itself to find fundings for their projects in Indonesia.
Unmuted.
Thank you. And David at the ADB, you get the last word. What can you do to help not just lending money? What about providing some financial advice? What about providing some risk assurances? Well, are you looking at other instruments, or is it just mainly lending?
Yes, I think we provide more services lending. We also provide guarantees in case banks, especially international banks, have issues regarding long-term Indonesia risk. I mean, just to close off, I think, we're very optimistic about the renewable energy sector in the future, especially solar. I see solar panel costs going down to compete with alternative fuels like coal. I can see, as Daniel mentioned, more floating solar with battery storage to get rid of the intermittency. So I think we're quite bullish on this sector. And maybe one final point is, and I think something that's in the market right now is that PLN is looking at sort of dual tariffs, which is US dollars and rupiah tariffs. And this is sort of where ADB can kind of help catalyze the rupiah financing market by providing long-term rupiah, slowly getting domestic banks involved and other international banks to see that we can have some kind of a sort of balance between US dollars and rupiah tariff and financings. Thank you.
Very good. Very good. Well, sadly, we're out of time. We've barely scratched the surface of an enormous agenda, but thank you to the panelists. Thank you to the audience for your questions. And Simon, back to you.
Actually, Andrew, it's Nick Rastor here, the Portfolio Director for Enlit Asia. I'd like to thank you, Andrew, and the speakers today. It's been extremely insightful with some great conversations. But as this concludes our Indonesian New Energy Paradigm series, I'd like to give some special mention to our friends and partners at MKI and PLN for sharing your knowledge and giving us access to your industry. We look forward to meeting you all on the 23rd to 25th of March next year in Jakarta for the event Enlit Asia, working alongside MKI and PLN for that. We will continue our online journey with a series of webinars focusing on the opportunities in Thailand with EGAT, which is starting on the 5th of November. The episode on the 5th of November will be a far-reaching interview with EGAT's power business and governor-in-waiting, Kun Bunyanit, who will share with the viewers the direction of travel for Thailand's national utility as it approaches a period of significant transformation. You can find out more about this on the Enlit Asia or enlit.world websites. But for today, I'd like to say thank you and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Everybody.
Thank you.
Goodbye.
Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Thank you.
PLN menyadari bahwa untuk mendukung pertumbuhan ekonomi, mendorong investasi, dan pemerataan industri atau energi berkeadilan, tenaga listrik memiliki andil yang penting. Kestabilan dan kualitas pasokan listrik merupakan kunci pertumbuhan industri modern yang akan memacu peningkatan perekonomian nasional. Melalui inovasi dan teknologi, PLN selalu berupaya untuk meningkatkan keamanan, pelayanan, dan keandalan dengan standar kualitas tertinggi, memupuk kepercayaan dan mengembangkan kredibilitas PLN terhadap masyarakat dan khususnya industri. Menyediakan layanan konstruksi, layanan event, dengan mendorong clean energy, kecepatan, dan kemudahan melalui pelayanan power bank. Dengan meningkatnya kualitas dan keandalan listrik PLN, perusahaan yang dulu menggunakan pembangkit sendiri atau captive power, sekarang mulai beralih menggunakan listrik PLN, memberikan solusi energi untuk berbagai sektor dari hulu ke hilir. Transformasi PLN, Power Beyond Generations.